Sound check 1, 2, 3. Can I get the interpreters to make a sound check on the English channel, please? Thank you.
This is the interpreter on the English channel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Is that good?
That is great. Thank you so much. Can I get the interpreters to do a sound check on the French channel, please? Thank you. Parfait. Merci beaucoup.
So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Built Heritage Committee meeting of July 8th, 2025. I'd like to call the members to order. This hybrid meeting is being facilitated through Zoom and is being held on the traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, the original custodians of the unceded land in which tradition and I think we were having a technical issue, but it seems to have resolved itself. So we extend our respect to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples for their valuable past and present contributions to this land. Since this committee meeting is being streamed live on the Ottawa City Council YouTube channel, I'd like to remind participants to please keep your microphones muted until I call upon you to speak. For those participating here in the committee room, please use the microphone in front of you and keep your computer muted. I will provide each committee member with the opportunity to ask questions or comment on each item in the order in which they raise their hand in Zoom. For panelists, the raise hand option is found at the bottom of the participants list. For those calling in, press *9 to raise your hand. The committee coordinator and I will be watching for those cues. Members are also reminded to submit any motions, visual supports, or declarations of interest in writing to the coordinator at their earliest opportunity. Although the deadlines have passed for residents to register to speak and provide written submissions to this committee, residents can still make written submissions to council. A reminder that if participants are having technical issues with their Zoom connection, they may call in using the backup telephone number provided by the coordinator. Colleagues, for today's meeting, I have received regrets from Councillor Leeper. Shall we proceed with the roll call?
Member Quinn.
Present? Was it me? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Sorry. Yes, I'm here. At least I hope I am.
Councillor Kelly. Member Madigan.
Present.
Councillor Troster.
Here.
Member Legault. Councillor Leeper. Member Borns.
Present.
Vice Chair Plante.
Ici.
Chair King.
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you so much. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, are the meeting minutes for June 10th, 20 confirmed?
Confirmed.
Confirmed. Excellent. And I think I saw that Member Legault has joined us. I'll proceed with a agenda this morning. Our first item is Island Park Drive Heritage Conservation District Feasibility Assessment. We will hold that item for a presentation, and there are delegations. The second item is application for alteration at 168 and 174 Murray Street, properties designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act as part of the Laurier Avenue West Heritage Conservation District. There are no delegations apart from that of the applicant, and we did receive correspondence from Heritage Ottawa. Does anybody want to hold this item? Seeing none, on consent, is this item carried? Carried. Thank you so much. So this report will be submitted to Ottawa City Council on July 23rd, 2025. Our next item is designation of 410, 412 Besser Street under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Once again, we do not have delegations. We did receive correspondence from Heritage Ottawa. Is it the will of this committee to pass this item on consent?
Sure. Yeah. Let's do it.
Excellent. Excellent. Carried. So this report will be submitted to Ottawa City Council on July 23rd, 2025. And we do have a status update on Built Heritage Committee inquiries and motions for the period ending July 20th, 2025. These are just recommendations. Is this item received? Received. Thank you so much. So we can now go back to item number 1, Island Park Drive Heritage Conservation District Feasibility Assessment with a presentation from staff.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, Vice Chair, Chair, and members of the Built Heritage Committee. So today, myself and my colleague Kirsty Walker are here to present on the Heritage Conservation District feasibility assessment for Island Park Drive. And next slide, please. So there's quite a bit of ground to cover in this brief presentation, so I'll just start with a quick agenda. So first, I'm just going to present a quick refresher on background for this project, so committee's up to speed. Then we'll move into discussing the findings and results of the feasibility assessment. And finally, we'll look at staff's recommendation to committee and council today to talk about next steps for the broader feasibility assessment project. So next slide, please. So just for everyone's benefit, we'll start with a bit of background on this project. The report in front of you today follows Council's direction from a June 2024 report that forms part of the Heritage Planning Branch's response to and implementation of the various legislative amendments made to the Ontario Heritage Act through Bill 23, Bill 200, and others. So the changes to the Municipal Heritage Register made through these bills created some gaps in heritage protection across the city, as we've discussed over the last few years. In addition to individual designations, the designation of new heritage conservation districts is another strategy that we can use to address these gaps. So with that in mind, the designation of a heritage conservation district is a really significant undertaking that requires comprehensive study, extensive public consultation, and the development of a full district plan. So in order to expedite those processes as much as possible, we needed a sort of strategic plan or strategy to plan our HCD work over the near and short term. So next slide, please. So this is where the HCD feasibility assessment concept and project comes into play. So HCD feasibility assessments are a new strategy that we're using here at the city, and their purpose is to review at a high level an area's heritage value and determine if that area has enough designation potential to pursue its designation as a heritage conservation district before advancing to a full study and engagement process. So essentially, the feasibility assessment is a pre-study that is used to figure out kind of the next step. So it really asks, should the city study the designation of this area or not? So if we look at this chart on the screen here, we're kind of in the advanced stage prior to receiving a council direction, pursuing that full heritage conservation district study and the development of a plan in addition to the extensive public consultation and engagement that involves. So next slide, please. And in terms of why we're taking this approach, there's a few reasons. First, these feasibility assessments are a really useful long-term planning exercise. So going through the feasibility assessment process and updating our work plan for HCDs helps to plan and prioritize that HCD work for the coming years. And second to that, they are an efficient use of our existing resources and support the expedited completion of future HCD studies and plans. So the feasibility assessments provide a foundation for future research in their respective areas. They identify and compile key resources. They recommend areas of focus for future studies and plans, and they identify specific resource requirements for those bigger projects. So doing this work now means that future HCD studies can get started and completed faster. And finally, these feasibility assessments make the city's designation process even more transparent to the public. So long-term planning for HCD designation has always happened, but never really in a way like this that invites public participation and created a public record in the way that today's report does. So next slide, please. So now we'll move into actually discussing the report at hand in front of committee today. So the HCD feasibility assessment for Island Park Drive. So the 2024 report that I mentioned earlier recommended that heritage planning staff complete feasibility assessments for 5 areas across the city, including Island Park Drive. Island Park Drive is the first of these to come forward, and we used it really to pilot this format. So the others will be following a similar format and based on the results of this. In 2023, we received an actual formal request from the Island Park Community Association to look into the designation of Island Park Drive, which led to this area being one of those recommended for feasibility assessment. So the entire study area extends along the length of Island Park Drive from Carling Avenue to the Kitchissippi-Meekan Parkway. And next slide, please. So now we'll move into discussing the content, results, and findings of the feasibility assessment. And the feasibility assessment document, which is attached to today's report, can be broken down into roughly 4 sections. So a historical overview, which charts the growth and development of the area, a character overview, which looks at its built and landscape characteristics, the assessment, which actually starts to look at how the criteria which are used to assess designations are involved or are represented in this area, and then finally the recommendations and discussion. So we'll start with the historical overview, which charts the development of Island Park Drive, and I'll pass it over to my colleague Kirsty Walker to walk you through that section. And next slide, please.
So to go over the historical overview, Island Park Drive stemmed from the creation of the Ottawa Improvement Commission, the IOC, which was established in 1899. Their main goal was to beautify the capital, and they did this through the creation of parkways and scenic driveways. So in 1903, they hired landscape architect Frederick Todd, and he created a preliminary plan for both sides of the Ottawa River for parkways, parks, and driveways. And in this included a Victoria Parkway, which extended from the Reeder River Canal Parkway from the experimental farms up to the Remick Rapids Islands. Next slide, please. So then from 1903 to the early 1920s, it was a pretty slow development due to multiple reasons, such as economic factors, the impact of the First World War. And so with all that being said, real work began in 1921 and was completed in 1923. And during that period, it was sometimes called the Cowley Driveway, other times the West End Driveway, but then by 1925, it was pretty consistently referred to as Island Park Drive. Next slide, please. So there were three main developers of the area. So from the north, from the Kitchissippi-Meekan Parkway to Richmond Road was the Cowley family. From Richmond to Highway 417 was the Hampton Park Association. Also, they were owned by the Brennan family. And then from Highway 417 south to Carling was owned by the Ottawa Land Association. They were the main landholders of the parkway. Next slide, please. Thanks. So all three landowners entered agreements with the IOC, and the covenants themselves were 99 years and had different levels of restrictions on the properties. So the first one was signed in 1921 and then followed by 1922. And as I said, with all three landowners of the area. Next slide, please. And so the covenants themselves had specific restrictions, and some examples of those is that the properties had to be sold for residential purposes and having one detached residence only. The buildings must cost at least $4,000, and the plans were approved by the IOC and then later by the Federal District Commission and then the NCC. And things were regulated, such as the setback. They were consistently 25 feet, and other things such as the rear laneways. And we see these through blueprints as well, that these were regulated. So I will hand this back over to Greg if we want to go to the next slide to talk about the character overview.
Okay, thank you, Kirsty. So the next major component of the feasibility assessment is the character overview, where we look at the physical characteristics of the area, so both the built form and the landscape characteristics. So Island Park Drive is a predominantly residential street featuring single attached houses or detached houses converted for other uses, notably ambassadorial properties or ambassadorial residences. As the main building typology. There are a few exceptions to that. Notably, there's a bit of a concentration of gas and service stations at the intersection of Island Park Drive and Richmond Road. So properties on Island Park Drive generally feature a range of architectural styles, primarily Tudor Revival, Arts and Crafts, and Georgian Revival. But the majority of these are vernacular in nature, so meaning they often feature aspects of certain architectural styles, but are not necessarily representative examples of one of those styles in and of themselves. And this is really reflective of the era of development. So many properties display subtle aspects of early modernism in tandem with features more exemplary of those historical architectural styles. There's also a fairly common material palette throughout the street, a lot of red brick, a lot of stucco and stone accents as well. And next slide, please. So looking now to the streetscape and public realm, Island Park Drive is very strongly unified across its length by its shared landscape and contextual features. These reflect the historical covenants and the Ottawa Improvement Commission's approaches to scenic parkway design. The most significant features include the consistent front yard setbacks from Island Park Drive, the wide grass boulevards between the road and private property, the mature tree canopy, and design elements such as the Ottawa Improvement Commission or NCC light standards and gate posts that are featured throughout the street. Next slide, please. And this is just a diagram that's pulled from the feasibility assessment document that really highlights the consistency of those setbacks, as well as the right-of-way and the size of the right-of-way between the road and the private properties on Island Park Drive. And next slide, please. So now I'll talk about the actual assessment component of the feasibility assessment. Essentially, in this section, we take a two-pronged approach, combining the character overview with a high-level review of the designation criteria set out by the Ontario Heritage Act, then get to a final recommendation. And next slide, please. So just to step back a moment for some clarity, we'll just take a look at how districts are designated generally. So under the Ontario Heritage Act, we use Regulation 906 to assess properties for designation. This establishes 9 different criteria that we look to. And these criteria for heritage conservation districts are essentially the same as what's used when we designate an individual building. So the committee will be quite familiar with these. The key difference with designating an HCD is that in order to designate a district, the city needs to demonstrate that at least 25% of properties in that area meet 2 or more of those criteria. So it's important to reiterate that this test is not what the feasibility assessment in front of you is looking at today. This type of test is actually completed within a comprehensive HCD study, which would happen further down the line. So today we're just looking at if Island Park Drive even has the potential to meet this test, and making a call as to whether or not we should be going down that path of completing that comprehensive study and engagement process. So next slide, please. So with that in mind, we developed a review approach to help us estimate that potential for designation and for meeting the test under the Ontario Heritage Act, almost by treating the area like a big Part 4 designation or a big individual designation. So using the historical and contextual information compiled, we looked at each individual criterion under Regulation 906 and estimated the potential for that 25% threshold to be met for each, using a scale of low, medium, and high. The results of this review then inform the final recommendations of the project. And next slide, please. So on Island Park Drive, we identified 4 criteria that have a medium and high probability of meeting or surpassing the 25% threshold set out in Ontario Regulation 906. Island Park Drive has high potential to meet criteria 7 and 8, both of which relate to the physical and historical context of the area. So there are many shared features among properties, such as the consistent landscaping, setback, and general material palette of the properties that contribute to an identifiable character and sense of place. There's also a shared history through the creation of the street by the Ottawa Improvement Commission and the nearly 100-year history of the historical covenants, which directly influence the growth and development of the street, and also establish a physical, visual, and historical link between the properties. So Island Park Drive also has medium potential to meet criteria 4 and 5, both of which speak to the area's historical value. So there are direct associations with institutions, notably the Ottawa Improvement Commission and its contemporary successor, the National Capital Commission, that may hold greater significance upon further research. In support of criteria 5, there's also the potential for the area to yield further information about the early Jewish community in West Ottawa, which is an association identified by the Island Park Community Association through their submission from 2023. There's also some potential to further identify associations and significance with Ottawa's diplomatic and ambassadorial communities through further research. Criterias 1, 2, and 3, which relate to design value, were found to have low potential in meeting the 25% threshold. The significant design elements, such as the common palette of materials, the building typologies, are more strongly supportive of the contextual factors in criteria 7 and 8. The next slide, please. So with this in mind, there's a number of findings presented by the feasibility assessment. First and most notably is that Island Park Drive does have the potential to be designated as a heritage conservation district, or has the potential to meet that test for designation under the Ontario Heritage Act. In addition to that, there's a few additional findings that kind of help give some further context to that thought. First, contextual features in Island Park Drive are the most significant. What most strongly contributes to Island Park Drive's sense of place, as identified through the feasibility assessment, are the shared features that tie the street together, such as the common setbacks, the landscape lawns and boulevards, and the mature tree canopy. Further conservation efforts in Island Park Drive should really focus on conserving these features, as they will hold the most significant impact. And next slide, please. In addition, there are a number of recommendations in the assessment document which speak to a couple of other factors on Island Park Drive. One is through the new zoning bylaw process, it recommends that heritage staff work with our colleagues in policy planning to ensure that the existing exceptions, which kind of reiterate those specific setbacks on Island Park Drive are maintained through the new zoning bylaw process. A number of individual properties are identified for consideration as Part 4 designations as well, in consultation with those property owners. And next slide, please. Finally, in terms of the recommendations of the staff report, so the staff report in front of you today does recommend that heritage planning staff undertake a heritage conservation district study and prepare a district plan for Island Park Drive in accordance with the requirements of the Ontario Heritage Act. It also presents for information a revised terms of reference for the completion of these heritage conservation district feasibility assessments. There were some updates to the terms of reference that was originally presented in 2024, reflective of the process and just clarifying some of the different aspects of the feasibility assessment based on the results of this project. And next slide, please. And just finally, to speak to consultation. So the Island Park Community Association, as I mentioned before, did submit a request for designation in 2023, and they've been aware of and involved in this project and report. We did most recently present an overview of the report and recommendations at the June 2025 Island Park Drive Community Association Annual General Meeting. Councillor Leeper is also aware of the recommendations of this report, and the NCC is also aware of the recommendations of this report. And that concludes our presentation today. So happy to answer any questions, and thanks very much.
Thank you so much for the in-depth presentation and report. We did receive correspondence on this item from Heritage Ottawa, as well as the former president of the Island Park Community Association. And we do have delegations. So we'll start our delegations with John Newcomb. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and you have 5 minutes before the committee.
Is that it? Good. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is John Newcomb. I have owned and operated a business known as Island Park Esso, located on the southeast corner of Wellington Street West and Island Park Drive for the past 52 years. My lifelong commitment serving the community at this address spans 3 generations. I'm asking you today to reject the Island Park Community Association's request that Island Park Drive be considered for designation as a Heritage Conservation District. In the event your decision is to support such a designation, I'm requesting that my address of 369 Island Park Drive be specifically excluded. Unlike all residential addresses on Island Park Drive, my property is unique as it has always been commercially zoned, and up until the mid-1960s, the address had been 40 Richmond Road. I suspect the address change to 369 Island Park Drive was initiated by the post office to facilitate door-to-door mail delivery. My commercial property is aligned with the Richmond Road, Wellington Street West commercial corridor. It is not part of the fabric of Island Park Drive. It serves as a gateway to the business district of Wellington Street West and is zoned traditional Main Street. Furthermore, as a commercial operation, my building has never complied with the strict requirements of the Cowley Covenant set out by the original developer to establish the size and architectural requirements of any residence built on Island Park Drive. This should confirm that from the beginning of original development, my property was never considered to be integral with the identity of Island Park Drive. Why, you might ask, did the Island Park Residents Association put forth this request for the designation of a Heritage Conservation District? It is well known to me that some immediate neighbors are actively attempting to curb any future development of my property and are attempting to use any restrictions afforded by the Heritage Conservation District to help achieve that end. The motivations for requesting this designation are purely self-serving, not altruistic. You will note with interest that although the Kitchissippi United Church was excluded from their proposal, my lone commercial property was not. The integrity and design of quality of homes constructed on the street is already protected by municipal zoning regulations, as well as the aforementioned Cowley Covenant. Properties of specific historic or architectural interest are already listed on the city's Heritage Register. The homes on Island Park Drive are as attractive now as they were 50 years ago, if not more so, and they do not require any additional protection afforded by the designation of a Heritage Conservation District. With these factors in mind, I implore you to reject the request for consideration of this designation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your delegation. You do have a question from Vice Chair Plant.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I've filled up my tank many times at that Esso. It's always, you know, because everything's so automated now. It's so interesting to see the person behind the operations. So
Next time the car wash is on me.
all right. Thank you. So I was just wondering, because I have a similar situation where I have a petrol can at the corner of Rideau and King Edward, very busy, sort of similar situation where there's a traditional main street. And when we are doing anything sort of heritage in the area, I don't generally hear those same concerns from them. So can you maybe elaborate what, like, is it that you wish to develop your property? Is that you wish to sell it? I'm just a little confused.
Well, I'm in good health and enjoy going into my business every day, but I turned 73 in a month. Oh, thank you. It's smelling all those gasoline fumes. It keeps me young. But being realistic, I have to think of my retirement. My investment in that property is my retirement. I'm self-employed. I do not have a pension from a corporation or an employer. And I'm relying on the ability to sell and develop that property to support myself in my later years. It's that realistic. There's already condos on 2 of the 3 corners, and I know some of the neighbors near me. They're fighting tooth and nail any way they can to see my corner not go that way. But I mean, that's the reality of the future.
What do you mean problems on certain corners?
Pardon?
What do you mean problems on certain corners?
Oh, I'm at properties on certain corners.
Oh,
There's other condos across from me and beside me.
okay. No, I do. I appreciate your candor. I hear those things a lot, especially like on Rideau Street where we have, you know, traditional buildings that have been in the same families for generations. I'm thinking of the Lauzon family. And then, you know, they're thinking what's going to happen when I sell, you know, will it have the same worth, or is it going to turn off buyers? So I do hear this a lot. I'm just wondering, can maybe staff answer is if it is turned into a heritage, I don't know if there's any planners here, maybe that's more for that, but
And
will that?
Vice Chair Plant, we'll wait for
Okay,
staff.
sorry. Yep, we can
time
get
for
to that after.
questions.
I'll try to get some answers for you. Thank you.
And you do have questions from Member Borns. He's online.
Morning. I noticed that there seems to be some divergence on Scott Street, and I'm less familiar. I know your spot, but I'm less familiar with what's on the 4 corners at Richmond Road. Can you run through what's on the 4 corners?
Now, you mean the 4 corners of Richmond?
Richmond and Island Park.
Okay, I'm on the southeast corner. I own and operate a service station. On the northeast corner is a 12-story condo development by Ms. Rahi. On the let's see, it would be the southwest corner, a 12-story condo is under construction by Trinity. And on the northwest corner is a car lot, I believe, owned by
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think those are all the questions from around the table. I know that Councillor Leeper unfortunately gave regrets, but I do know that he indicated to myself that he was still going to undertake discussions with you around this item before council. So we do appreciate your delegation here this morning. And our next delegation is Jennifer Gillespie. And you just need to press the button and you'll have 5 minutes. Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I just want to thank you all for all the work that you do. I'm a big fan of heritage work. So, and thank you to Greg for all the work that your team has done on this project. I didn't really schedule myself to speak rather than just be here, but I know John Newcomb very well and I adore the guy. He's a very good person and I definitely don't want to do anything that's going to hurt your future. I think that you'll find on that Four Corners, I had found evidence at the archives, the National Archives, that the covenants did apply to at least 3 out of the 4. The only one I couldn't find it for, the covenants applying, was ironically the Heritage gas station that's on the southwest corner, which was protected. And Mr. Newcomb had done a beautiful job restoring his gas station at great expense to look back to the period of when it was first built. But I am kind of the author of the work, and I know that the staff are heavily burdened with a lot of work right now. And my goal was to try to help humbly alleviate some of that work by doing a lot of research. And I've been very blessed to, by luck, meet people who were original residents, such as Dr. Watt over there and his family lived at 499. But as well as John Booth, the great grandson of J.R. Booth. So yeah, thank you for what you're doing, and that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you so much for your delegation. I don't see any questions, and thank you for your service to the community. I know as former president of a community association myself, I know there's a tremendous amount of work that's involved with that, as well as providing research to staff to assist in the process. So we're very appreciative for your contributions and for your delegation this morning.
When I should mention, Greg's a good sport. I dumped a 3-inch binder of research. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it was a monster binder that represents almost 10 years worth of research work. And there are documents in there that aren't available on the internet. We've been blessed to find them in what I call the box of delights that have been passed down through past iterations of our community association. We had good relationship with the NCC, and they gave us documents where we're a heritage asset inventory of the NCC. I don't know if that's going to play into your decision today, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your delegation. Now, questions to staff. Councillor Troster.
Thank you so much, Chair. So this is not the first time we've heard about someone who's concerned about designation of an entire area, but specifically to their own property, which may or may not be a heritage property. So I'm wondering if you could just let us know what restrictions or any the gas station owner would have should this designation go through. Like how would it impact his ability to redevelop his property?
Thank you for the question through the chair. So at this point, again, just to clarify, the recommendations of this report today won't result in any designation or anything like that. It just results possibly in a direction to actually undertake that Heritage Conservation District study. So it's very early still. And as always with heritage conservation districts, the goal is to manage change, not to prevent development or anything like that. So we, I think have an opportunity actually here, should this recommendation go forward, to work directly with the property owner to understand their concerns and possibly scope out aspects of the HCD and HCD plan, which could allow them to ensure that their development interests can be met and also manage change and meet the goals of the HCD more broadly.
Okay, so within the scope of the study, you could recommend also excluding certain properties?
Yep, certainly.
Oh, okay. So this is just a study. The gas station could be excluded.
Yep.
And even if it isn't, there's limited restrictions that would be placed on redevelopment of that site.
At this point, yes. I mean,
Okay.
in the future, if there was an HCD established here under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, there could be restrictions that would be similar to other
Okay.
HCDs in the city, like, for example, restrictions on demolition or requiring alterations, or requiring permits for alterations. But at this point, there would be no restrictions applied.
Okay. Okay. And I mean, I'll just say, as a counselor who has, I think, 5 heritage districts in my ward, it certainly has not stopped redevelopment. We have many high rises and modern buildings going into those places. And I don't think the bar has been particularly difficult when it comes to demolishing a building that's not itself designated, even though it's within the district. I don't know your observations on that matter, but certainly hasn't slowed development in Somerset Ward. I'll just put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Member Quinn.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question for clarification that the other, that the corner in question, Island Park and Richmond Road, the other 3 properties are included in the Heritage Conservation District, proposed district?
Correct. Those properties are included in the area that was part of the feasibility assessment.
So are there any exclusions so far?
At this point, we haven't made any exclusions. There would be an opportunity to establish further exclusions either at this point or through the actual study process.
Okay. And then Mr. Newcomb has done a beautiful job, as I think Ms. Gillespie mentioned, in preserving and investing in his beautiful Art Deco style gas station. And so I, personally would like to commend him for that, because I also frequent that location. And but on the other hand, I think at this stage, I would like to say right now, I am reluctant to make any decisions about removing anything from the proposed district at this time. I think there are opportunities, as Councillor Joster just pointed out. It's not restrictive against development. That's not the goal of the Conservation District. So I do respect Mr. Newcomb's concerns, however. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Plante.
So I'm just thinking back. We have a property, and I'm sure Councillor King knows it. It's on the corner of Beechwood and Joliette, and it's kind of an empty space right now. It's owned by the Pakistani embassy. And the reason why they haven't been able to sell it, because I did have a meeting with them, is because it used to be a gas station and it's contaminated. And so I'm just wondering if that could also be an issue for you when you want to resell. I don't know sorry, I'm just looking at you, sir. I don't know if that's going to be a consideration when you resell. And also, but I'm happy to maybe put I don't know if you guys need a direction to maybe exclude this property as part of the study, like whatever you think would be helpful at this point, or, hands off, whatever you guys think is best.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Staff's opinion at this point is that the property should remain within the study area and that we would work with the property owner. We think it's too early to remove properties at this point in time because we don't have a full understanding of the area, and the eventual boundary that we would recommend would come out through the study. Just as an example, when we designated the Clement-Moncklin Parkway HCD in the Glebe, we ended up removing a couple of properties facing onto Bank Street because they didn't really relate to the reasons that we were designating the other district. So there are opportunities to amend boundaries, but we think it should be done through the comprehensive study.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Member Madigan.
Thank you, Chair. In the original covenant, when you're doing your first study, was the gas station location included as far as you understood the information you had?
Thank you for the question through the chair. So it's a little bit difficult at this point to pinpoint exact properties that the covenants would have included, because the way they were established was actually on the wider area, and then they were carried through as properties were subdivided. So it's likely that at least at some point the covenants would have applied to that property. Whether or not it was removed at some point would actually require some more specific research into the actual title of that property to see where and if it fell off at some point.
Okay. Yeah, my feeling is it wasn't really covered by the original covenants. There's no obligations on the site. My first reaction would be excluded from this. But that said, you have to look at the whole area cohesively. And something to look further along with the additional documentation to really understand what the original intent was along that street and that corner. Because, you know, the other three corners are basically developed now, and, you know, we'll probably not need gas in some time in the future, maybe near future, but gas stations are still important. But, you know, there's also still potential to develop that location for other uses. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions from members, but I just had a few comments. I really did want to express thanks to staff for this work, which really, in my mind, represents a significant milestone in Ottawa's heritage conservation efforts. This feasibility study for Island Park Drive really focuses on creating the city's first comprehensive heritage conservation district focused on a scenic parkway character. I think that's important. And the assessment responds directly to a formal request from the Island Park Community Association. And I once again really want to thank the work that has been done on behalf of residents of that area in terms of the information that's been relayed to staff. It's very powerful and demonstrates the strength of volunteer efforts. I think it really does demonstrate genuine grassroots support for heritage conservation. Island Park Drive represents a remarkable piece of Ottawa's planning heritage. Our capital's early vision as a city beautiful exemplar, designed by Canada's first landscape architect. This HCD proposal recognizes prioritizing landscape character over individual architectural merit, recognizing that heritage value can be found in the harmony of streetscape designs. And the designation addresses Council's direction to pursue proactive heritage conservation in Ward 15, while contributing to the geographic diversity of our heritage protection efforts. Staff have recommended a thoughtful approach that protects character-defining features while respecting property owners' reasonable use and maintenance needs. And I'd also like to say, despite the fact that Councillor Leeper isn't here and provided regrets, it is his intent to work with affected property owners around their concerns. And so there is a process to do that. The assessment that we have before us demonstrates strong potential to meet Ontario Heritage Act requirements, while particularly high ratings for the contextual criteria that make this area special. And the proposed HCD scope reflects the same standard property owners have successfully lived for nearly a century under the original covenants. Staff has designed an approach that focuses municipal oversight where it matters most, protecting the landscape features that define the corridor's character. Heritage designation provides clear, consistent standards for managing change while ensuring Island Park Drive's character is preserved for future generations. So I do encourage committee members to support staff's recommendation to proceed with a full HCD study, recognizing this as an opportunity to pioneer a new model of heritage conservation in Ottawa. And I did receive correspondence from the ward councillor, from Councillor Leeper, also in support of this item. I think it's important that we ensure that this important work continues with adequate resources and community engagement while coordinating with the new zoning bylaw to maintain existing protections. So once again, the item before us is the feasibility assessment.
Member Bournes.
Sorry. Sorry, I did not see your hand up, Member Bournes.
My apologies. I support the department recommendation, but I just wanted to make a comment that I really think the gas station is one of the key elements to the conservation area, and that if anything, it's the other three corners that might be excluded from a designation. When that comes forward, it may be that there's some opportunity to expand the gas station and perhaps, you know, at the back, but I really think the preservation of the gas station itself is an important aspect of the Island Park Heritage District, and certainly Island Park is an area that I heard of early in my attendance, and certainly think it should be maintained. Thank you.
I appreciate those comments and apologies for not catching your hand as I was making my comments. But I would also mirror the idea that Island Park Drive represents everything we value about Ottawa's heritage. I think thoughtful planning, community character, and the vision of our capital as a beautiful living city. So on this item, is it carried?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you so much. So this report will be submitted to Ottawa City Council on July 23rd, 2025. The only items outstanding are in-camera items, and we have none to date. There was no information previously distributed. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none. Are there any inquiries? Seeing none. There is no new business on adjournment. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Pursuant to our procedure bylaw, the meeting for August has been canceled. Our next meeting will be scheduled for September 9th, 2025. Have an excellent summer, everybody.